Welcome to Talk Real Media's Taboo Podcast, where we talk about the shit that unites us. I am your host, M. Mays, and I'd like to thank you for supporting independent journalism. Grateful that you are joining us here as part of the May We Prevail mental health campaign, and for this edition of Matters of Mental Health. On this episode, I am extraordinarily proud to feature a fellow lady boss. Her and I connected a few years ago through a pain-related training, and after hearing me speak, she approached me, and we've been instant soul sisters ever since. There's something inherently magical about crossing paths with another woman who is secure in herself, not out to compete with you, tear you down, or use you in any way to gain prestige, or who is in no way motivated by any ounce of selfishness or greed. Experiencing that sort of bond with someone is extremely rare, in my opinion, especially as a woman. I respect this individual immensely, not only due to the way she carries herself, but because of how she shows up in the world and uses her experiences, both bad and not so much, to empower and uplift the world. She is a radio, talk show, and podcast host, president of Fibromyalgia Patient Education and Support Organization, a world-renowned speaker, as well as accomplished author. And please trust when I say that only just scratches the surface. I'll be forever grateful that this person and I crossed paths, as I do consider them someone I hope to keep around me for the duration of my time on Earth. So needless to say, I'm extraordinarily thrilled and appreciative to have them here. Absolutely any and everyone can benefit from what she has to share. Welcome, Nisi, and thank you so much for joining us and setting aside some of your ever so valuable time to be here.
Thank you, Mia, my sister from another mother, my soul sister. How are you doing today?
Hanging in, one moment, one breath at a time. How about yourself?
Same here, taking it one day at a time because that's all we get.
That's all we get. That's right, one moment at a time. So why try to approach life any differently than that? It just don't make sense.
Yes.
So I've been starting these segments off by inquiring as to what each person's definition, what it is regarding mental health. So how would you personally define that term, mental health?
So when I think about mental health, I'm thinking about it from the aspect of not only the psychological, but it's also the physical and the emotional and the spiritual. And I say that because when it comes down to my mental health, for me, and I can only speak for me, I have to have balance in all those areas, because if spiritually something's not right, I'm not connecting with God, or, I'm out in no man's land where I just cannot focus and I'm just not myself, I'm not in balance. Same thing with my emotions. If I am all over the place, totally stressed out, cannot control my emotions, that's part of my mental health. So for me, mentally, I have to have all of those in order. Because all of that affects my mental health. It's not just my, emotional health. It's also my physical health, because emotionally, if I'm stressed out and all is not working well, Mia, then guess what? It's affecting my physical health. It also affects my spiritual health. It affects my gut health. It affects everything. And that's vitally important for women to know that we have to, and even if you're not a woman, but to know that we have to have balance in all areas of our life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I really appreciate you making that correlation, that mental health isn't just something inside of our heads, right? It is
right.
not only a part of, but also dependent upon that mention of balance, as you said.
Yes.
Each aspect of ourselves play off of and interferes with all the others. Do you agree?
I totally agree. That's why balance is vitally important. You can't have one without the other.
Exactly. I'm going to play off of my initial question and branch off a little bit and ask you what your definition of balance is and what that looks like.
Well, my definition of balance is when that means many things to me. It also can mean what's going on at the moment. So right now, balance to me means, okay, being in an environment where I have control of what's happening around me. So what I mean by that is, and you and I have talked about this before, when it comes down to balance, we have to control who's in our inner circle, who's surrounding us. I have to have balance even when how I use my resources financially. I have to have balance even in my job, because there's such a thing as work-life balance. So for me, I guess the best way to explain it is balance for me is being in a situation that I have control over the factors that affect me in various areas. Because if I lose control, it's just like, for example, Mia, and I hope I'm answering your question correctly, but it's just like, I've been in jobs, and one I just recently left, where I didn't really have any balance. And when you don't have balance, it controls everything you pretty much try to do. So balance for me is being able to take time out for Nisi, to focus on what she needs to do in order to be a blessing to others and to serve others. Because if I can't take care of me and I have an empty cup and I don't have nothing in it, that means I can't give to you. I can't give to nobody else. I can't give to me because why? I have no balance. I've allowed other people to use it all up, get in the way of the things that I need to accomplish because I'm too stressed out. I've allowed other people to dictate what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. I've allowed other people to be in my inner circle with the things that they say, the things that they do, how people try to control you. So when I think about balance, that's what I'm referring to when I say balance, because as women, a lot of time we don't have balance, we don't have any balance at all. We allow other people to just get in the way of things, because when you think about balance, you got to have balance between work and relaxation. You have to have balance in your relationships. It's the stability of your mind or your feelings. You have to have some type of peace and balance. It's got to be harmony. I guess that's the biggest word. Do I have harmony in my relationships with others? Do I even have harmony within myself?
Oh, tough one. Yes. Just a side note real quick. Any answer you give, Nisi, is more than correct. And it's a capital T truth because it's what's real for you. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Balance, what happens when we strive toward balance, but then life throws us off kilter, right? Like, how do we go about pursuing balance when there's so very much that is outside of our control? What is within our control?
Well, that's a loaded question, because what happens, number one, let's approach it from the aspect of what happens when we lose it. When we lose balance in our life, it can lead to stress. It can lead to strife, okay, because we don't have that peace. We don't have that harmony, and things are just not setting right for us because your life is out of balance. So that means when you don't have it, you're unable to sleep. You may get several illnesses in a row. You maybe not be able to shake a cold. I used to get sick quite frequently, and then one day I said, what keeps causing me to have all of these issues? And then I had to do some soul searching to look at what was happening to me. And I'm going to tell you what was happening to me. I kept having these feelings of being unsettled because I was unsettled. There were certain areas of my life that were not where I needed them to be because I had a chronic illness, Mia. I had stopped working. I couldn't work due to being sick. So I had this feeling of being uneasy, being unsettled, because that's not the life I was accustomed to living. I was a type A personality. I was a go-getter. I was used to being able to get things done, a mover and a shaker. And then when I didn't have that balance, I couldn't sleep properly. As I mentioned, I couldn't shake a cold. I used to get, it seems like a sinus infection probably like every 90 days or some type of upper respiratory infection. I was getting forgetful. I had less energy. And so what I had to do to gain back that balance for me is I had to tear it all down and rebuild it. And first thing I had to do was think about my physical health. I started movement. I started walking, okay? I started praying. I'm a woman of faith. I started meditating. And then I learned about Tai Chi. I became a certified Tai Chi chair instructor, and that did a lot for me when it came down to balance, because prayer, meditation, and journaling helped me to get my life back. But Mia, it's very painful. I don't know if you journal or not, but and I think you do. I have journals from prior years, and this one day I opened up a journal that I had started from when I was first diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Actually, it goes back before then. It was when I was being bullied when I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 2.5 years, where I was bullied, and for those 2.5 years, and I started journaling. So one day, I saw one of my old journals, and I opened it up, and I saw the things that I had written down about what was going on in my life, and I thought, OMG, this is real. This is some deep, heavy stuff. But then I realized something, just how far I had come, because as I was reading those things that I had written down in my journal, and I looked at where I was at then, I was no longer there. I had been able to move forward, and I realized that, okay, I've taken some steps. I still have a long way to go, but I recognize that those small steps that I had incorporated in my life, such as walking, more prayer, more reading the Bible, eating the right foods. But the biggest key to me with getting back balance was working on my mindset, because your mindset affects so many different areas of your life. Because when you think about your mindset, okay, that's how you think about the things that concern you. You know, it deals with your self-belief, how you live your life, the things that you say to yourself about yourself, and most importantly, the things that you believe about yourself. So for people sometimes with a chronic illness, you may be going through a really rough time because, number one, I don't know of anyone that wakes up in the morning and decides they want to be sick. Okay? Nobody I know wants to be sick. And then you are just in a funk about everything that's going on with you. And sometimes we're in denial. We don't want to face what's happening to us. We have our mentality sucks. Our inner feelings, the things that we say to ourselves are not good. And so I started writing down affirmations to get balance back in my life. And I had to start getting to the point where I thought of myself in positive terms, the things that I would say about myself and the things that I started believing about myself. Because in the beginning, it was really hard dealing with the bullying. It was really hard when I received the diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Sometimes, I'm admit, I was really scared with the fibro diagnosis because I can barely get out of bed. I had to crawl out of bed, and I was trying to envision a life where it wasn't going to be where I go to bed with pain and I wake up with pain, and that's all I knew. And I had to change that narrative And then I started saying things, and my mantra is stay on Hope Avenue. You got one day. That's all you get. Take it one day at a time, okay? Build upon each day. Practice gratitude, and it's going to get better. Why? Because I'm on Hope Avenue, and you cannot have a fixed mindset, because if you have a fixed mindset thinking that, okay, nothing's going to change, I'm stuck, and you start catastrophizing about why things are not working, you have to change that around and start thinking about and re-examining, okay, how do you want your life to look? And I started doing that. I started just really doing a lot of self-talk conversations with myself about how do I want my life to look. Maybe even doing some vision boards. And I would do me a mental vision boards where I would visualize how do I want my life to look. Okay, what job do I want to have? Okay, where do I see myself? I would see myself my favorite place in Hawaii where I'm relaxed, the things that I'm doing, all things peace, love, and joy, and happiness. And so that worked for me.
Hope Avenue. I absolutely love that. What better place to live,
Yes.
Thank you so much. That's so valuable. Soul searching. Whoa, that can sound absolutely terrifying to those of us who have spent the majority of our time running away from or avoiding whatever might be going on inside, right? So I really appreciate that mention of dis-ease. Not even necessarily something medical related, but the absence of harmony, as you said, within.
Yes.
Which, ultimately, if that's what's going on within, that'll only create outward chaos as well. And I think we're kind of seeing that on a global scale right about now, right?
Yes.
I want to venture a little bit into the painful stuff. Life is pain. You've mentioned some of your personal experiences with pain specifically. And pain is part of what reminds us that we're alive, right? If you're feeling something, it means you're still here. There's still a chance. There's still a change that can be made, right? And I hear you talk about a personal sense of ownership. You had endured a lot of tough times, Nisi, and kind of reached a point where you had to recognize that small steps were not only good enough and not only doable, but absolutely necessary. And that was your own personal work, girl. You did that. And I just want to take a moment to commend that fact and just shower you with some flowers to recognize how far you've come.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of the only constants in life is change, okay? So if we attempt to remain the same that we've always been, approach things the way we always have, reflect on things the way we always do, we tend to commit and continually recommit to staying stuck, right? That's all we'll ever know if that's the case. That's all that is available to us. And instead of blaming life for it, or really blaming anything for that matter, we do possess the ability to reflect inward, and that is something that is within our control. Self-talk and the inner dialogue that you mentioned, to me, I have to second that. I have to echo that. It is one of the most important things, in my humble opinion. So can you reflect on how you went about shifting that narrative? Like, how do we continue remaining in that more uplifting space as opposed to fixate on all that may be going wrong or feels as though it's against us?
Sure. Great question. First thing I recognize is that I had given people too much power over my life. So on the job, for example, when I was being bullied for 2.5 years, too many people had power over my life. And I say that because things were not going well. I was being bullied. I wasn't getting any support or anything, and I had to learn how to take my power back. So what happened was, I remember one day I went to work, and I had this young lady who abruptly said, she wanted to have a meeting with me. And I remember saying to her, are you sure that's what you want to do? Because I was so full in my spirit, and I had drawn a line in the sand and said, no more BS. I'm not taking it anymore. This is going to stop today. And we met, and she started raising her voice at me. And as I'm sitting there watching her, I realized that she thought she had all this power and all this control where she can just say anything and do anything to me, and I was supposed to accept it and just bow my head down and just, keep it moving. And that day, Mia, I saw something red. It was like a bull that was charging, and I let it all rip. And I felt like I was Superwoman and Wonder Woman all rolled up into one. And I saw myself, you ever seen at the rodeo how they had like the red drape, whatever you want to call it, and the bull is charging? Well, all I saw was red, and I was charging. And at that point, I didn't care. I just didn't care anymore. All I knew at that moment was, okay, you all think you can treat me any kind of way, do any kind of thing like you've been doing for the past 2.5 years. And then my manager at the time said that he wanted to have a meeting with me, and he wanted me to apologize to her but because of the things that I said to her. And I said, absolutely not. Will I not apologize? Why would I apologize? I meant every word that I said. And I said, and you yourself, sir, learned something today. And he said, well, what do you mean? What did I learn? I said, you learned today, you're going to stop messing with me. It stops today. I'm not going to tolerate it today. I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. I'm tired of it. And at that point, I then said to the senior management people, I need to have a talk with you. This has gotten out of control. They knew I was being bullied, Mia, but they wouldn't do anything. And my health was failing. But keep in mind at the time, I didn't know that I had fibromyalgia. I just knew that I had a whole lot of pain, but didn't know what it was. And at that moment, they wouldn't meet with me. It took them 30 days. Long story short, when we finally met, I had gotten sicker, wound up in the ER. In fact, never went back to work. So when I say taking your power back, when I got sick and I could no longer work, sometimes in my mind I kept replaying and rehashing everything that happened to me, and I had a lot of anger with myself because I said, okay, you should have handled this a long time ago. Nisi, you allowed this to go on for too long, and now you're here. What are you going to do about it? And I realized that, okay, they had power over me because you're working a job. You got to survive. You got to put food on the table. You got to eat. You got to survive just like the next person. But I said to myself, okay, I may not have that job. You may have bullied me, but guess what? I'm taking my power back. You don't control me. You're getting out of my head. You're getting out of my mind. Those negative thoughts that I had, that I started being angry with me about the situation, because for me, I had a whole lot of anger. I never lashed out, but I had a whole lot of anger. And I had to let that go because I realized, hey, these people are walking around, life's going on for them. I'm the one sitting up here with all this pain and all these emotions. So are these people greater than me? Are these people far more superior to me? No. Then why am I allowing them to rent space in my head for free? Because they're not paying me to be up in my mind, okay, causing me to be depressed and feel bad about myself. And so I said, you know what? That's not how God wants me to be. I know what the Word of God says, and so I'm going to speak life into my situation, and I'm going to take it one day at a time, and I don't care what happened on that job. Life goes on. They've gotten on with their life. I'm going to move forward with my life. I may not be employed now. I have this chronic illness, but this too shall pass. And Mia, I said every day, this too shall pass. I go to the doctor, and when you go to the doctor, sometimes when you have a chronic illness, they can make you more depressed, and I will look at the doctor and say, this too shall pass. And, I'm staying on Hope Avenue, and some of the doctors would just look at me like, what is she talking about? what does she mean this too shall pass? Is she not taking this seriously? And my attitude was, yes, I hear what you're saying, but this too shall pass, because if I accept everything that you're saying to me about my health as if it's doom and gloom, then I'm not believing this too shall pass. And my attitude was, I have to have a new attitude. Okay, you say now I have this. You say this is going on. Okay, this too shall pass, because I strongly believe that God was going to turn it around, and he did. And at my lowest point one morning when I had waken up, and I was in so much pain, and I was crying out to God about it. Mia, I heard God as clear as day speak to me and tell me this is not about you, okay? This is bigger than you. You are to get up and go out there and be a blessing to others. And that's why I always said stay on Hope Avenue, because when you stay on Hope Avenue, you have to have the attitude of expectancy. The attitude of expectancy represents that at any given moment, you recognize and understand your situation can change in a blink of an eye. That gives you balance. That turns your life around, because you're looking at it with the spiritual eye, not just the physical, because if you're just looking at it with the physical eye, and if all you see is doom and gloom, guess what? That may not be a good thing. So I had to just do the inner work and rely upon my faith, and don't give up, no matter how bad it was. Take it one day at a time. Every day wasn't bad. I still found the things to be grateful for, because I used to always say, well, it could always be worse. Staying on Hope Avenue, this too shall pass, and it did pass.
Wow. That's almost left me at a loss for words. Almost, not quite, almost. Things occur that deplete us of our power, like you're talking about. But ultimately, nothing can rob us of it without our permission, okay? No one can make us feel anything without our consent. When our health is fleeting in any regard, these are direct messages from our bodies attempting to communicate underlying needs. We experience, the entirety of our lives on the inside of ourselves, which means that we are inevitably our own most worthwhile investment. So I just want to shout out to you for taking a stand, not only out here in the physical world, so powerful, but inside yourself as well. It's a no bullying zone. Okay? We're not accepting it from others, and we're not accepting it from ourselves. And one thing that I love to reflect on is that we cannot remain committed to our BS and our growth at the same time. We've got to choose one.
Amen. Amen.
So this next thing I'm going to bring up is definitely something I'd love to devote more time to in the future, but I feel I'd be remiss not to make some space for it in the here and now. As you are comfortable sharing, Nisi, I am curious about the correlation between the approach and the treatment of your mental health and or health in general, specifically as a Black woman in America.
Sure. Wow. I don't think we're going to be able to cover it all today, because that takes us into a whole nother round, but I will share with you some things. That, number one, when it comes down to, let's first start with the chronic illness that led to the problems with the mental health. So many women experience different things, but picture this. So as a woman of color, sometimes the doctors do not take you seriously. They will tell you you're just whining, there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, that's what happened to me the very first time with the fibromyalgia diagnosis. I was not taken seriously. In fact, one doctor, and I'm going to quote him, I won't mention his name, but I will quote him. He said that women of color cannot get fibromyalgia because he says that when it comes down to pain, that's what you know. So you can't get fibro. This just happens to Caucasian women. What a bunch of load of hooey and BS, and BS if you think about it. I mean, because that's a bunch of nonsense. And so when it came down to my mental health, I had to find someone that I could connect to, because when it comes down to mental health, especially for Black women, and we do a really good job at taking care of other people, but not ourselves. And research has shown that women are at least twice as likely to experience an episode of major depression, more so than men. But for women of color, culturally, when you're seeking psychiatric providers, therapists, and whatnot, sometimes you don't find the people that you need. Because for me, I wanted to find a therapist that looked like me, that could relate to me, that could understand the challenges. Because part of the challenges in getting care is the cultural belief that only people who are crazy or weak seek mental health professionals, and that's not true, and that's not truthful. And then also sometimes, too, in the African-American community, you know, people do not want to seek out a counselor or therapist because nobody wants to appear to be weak. Nobody wants to come across that, you know, if I go over here and I get help, you know, your weakness. Sometimes the Black church will even tell you that, you know, just give it to God and it's all going to be fine. But here's the thing. Yes, I gave it to God, but God didn't tell me that I couldn't see a therapist. I feel that the therapist that I did wind up seeing, that praying to God about it, he led me to the right person that I could connect with. Culturally, it's hard because the people that you may be interested in seeing, so I live in Illinois, but a lot of the people that probably would have been a better fit for me culturally were not in my county. They would have been in Chicago. So I don't live in Chicago, and I did not want to go into the city where more culturally relevant practitioners would be. So I found someone else that I was seeing, and we had a connection. And the other thing, too, is she wasn't judgmental. She listened to me. Now, I have had probably 3 therapists. One was judgmental, and it didn't work because when she saw me come through the door, you ever met somebody and before you even had a conversation with them, it's just they look you over. It's just the way that they look, and they start to just talk to you down. When I would start having a conversation with this particular therapist about what was happening to me, oh, no. You know, certain things she would say to me, oh, no, you're mistaken. You're probably reading more into it. Even when I would tell her about the racism at the job and the bullying, she would say things such as, oh, no. You know, really, are you sure that's really how it was? See, she wasn't for me because her mindset was such that she saw me coming. She could not relate to me as a woman of color. She was not open. And then I moved to someone else that I started to see who is Asian, and it works well for me. Number one, there's no judgment. She validates how I'm feeling. It doesn't matter that she's not an African-American woman, but as a woman of color, when I'm speaking with her, it's empowering, it's liberating, and she validates my feelings and my emotions. And that carries a lot of weight when you need to get help, because the one thing you don't want to occur is you're feeling so down about yourself, your mental health is suffering, and then you go to a therapist and they devalue you, they don't uplift you, they don't build you up, and they talk down to you. It's like, you know what, really? Am I paying for this? No. And so for Black women, society plays a role in this, a strong role. And number one, we need more people of color in the mental health field. And in addition to that, we have to recognize that we cannot allow stigma to keep us from seeking mental health services. Think about postpartum depression, for example. A lot of women, black women and other women as well, deal with that. But a lot of black women may not seek help for that because of their prior experiences with mental health. Even with chronic pain, some black women may not, and women of color may not seek mental health treatment because of the way that they have been treated before. So we have to look at reducing those disparities, identifying those barriers, and acknowledging them and dealing with it. And then we must have culturally sensitive care because psychologists, therapists, they've got to recognize and deal with their own biases and recognize that, okay, if this is who you are about and this is your practice, treat people right. Be open to, number one, be listening. Don't have the attitude that when I show up at your door, you think you know everything all about me, because you don't. Listen to me. Get to know me because you have to build a relationship. And the biggest thing, Mia, when it comes down to mental health, if you're seeking someone for mental health services, you have to have trust. If I don't trust you, then guess what? I'm not going to return to seeing you. I've talked to many women of color who have seen therapists who then went and shared and disclosed information to their healthcare providers based upon their own biases about things that were simply not true because they were approaching things from their own self-reference criteria. I'll give you an example of that. Okay, I don't live in Chicago, and if I did live in Chicago, so be it. Nothing's wrong with that. But as a woman of color and a black woman, if I come to you for help, don't assume that I've been on drugs. Never have. Don't assume that I've come from a poor environment, a rundown home, or absentee father, or any of those things, because that's not true. Accept me for the woman that I am. Get to know who I am. It don't matter what you may see in the news, what you may read. That applies to everyone. Get to know me, the person. Understand why I'm coming to you. So, Mia, I once had this therapist, and I wanted to have a conversation with her about post-traumatic stress. The woman would never, ever allow me to speak. She kept speaking as if she was going to tell me what was actually wrong with me. And I told her one day, I said, I won't be back. You're not for me. I said, because you have these preconceived notions as to who I am. This is my first visit with me. Number two, you don't know what you're talking about, and you're not culturally sensitive to my needs. So we're not going to have a doctor and patient relationship. And it took a while until I finally found the person that I'm seeing now that I'm well pleased with.
I'm so grateful for that, Nisi, and I'm so sorry that you were, I say sorry not because there's anything I could do or to belittle it, like, oh, I'm so sorry, but I say sorry because I feel that so often people who are deserving of apologies don't get them. So I am sorry that you were forced to deal with that. Whoever those providers were should be fired or retire, because that right there, these are prime examples as to how those who are sworn in, sometimes, to protect, are actually causing more harm. And it's affirming to know that we don't have to settle on mistreatment or behavior. We can seek out, and in fact should seek out, adequate help and not give up until we find it, because you are worthy and deserving, period. Okay? So thank you so much for sharing. And I just want to say on that a huge part of my nursing career, when I was well enough to pursue it, I took it as a personal responsibility. It's not something I announced. It's not something that I showcased, but in my own heart, in the way that I operated on the hospital floor. was showing up for women, for people of color, and prisoners in particular, to ensure that they were being treated humanely and receiving the care that they needed. And I just want to drop a line to those who are listening, that these discrepancies are all of our responsibility to address, to call out, and to no longer sit by and idly disregard or accept. So anyone out there who wonders, right, what can I do to help? There you go. So shifting gears a little bit, Nisi, one thing that I especially value about you, the list is very, very long, longer by the day, really, but it's the concept by which you live and serve others, which is rooted in this idea of self-care, okay? Now, where we live in our society, hyper-focused, that's almost something like a buzzword. It might be a trending topic in today's society, but for those of us who have applied this discipline to our lives, it has indefinitely and undeniably shifted things for the better. So I'm curious about how you would respond to those who feel as though, and this is valid, of course, but that self-care is a privilege, right? That they may feel their life doesn't offer or permit them the opportunities or the availability to feel as if it's even possible. Let's be real. That's what we are here to do, right? Be real. So if I'm someone who doesn't have my basic needs met, for example, or I am stressed to the max in ensuring that I am, in fact, able to cover them, it's no wonder that I might reflect upon all of this as being somehow out of my reach or impossible for me. So how can we engage with this ideology in such a way that it is, in fact, accessible to any and all?
Okay. Well, first of all, for anyone that are feeling that way, what I would like to say is, to me, self-care is not a privilege. Self-care is not a one-size-fits-all. Self-care is not just for those with privilege, but sometimes privilege does play a role in our self-care practices. So if some people feel that, okay, I have to have a lot of money to engage in self-care. No, it should be something that is accessible to everyone. Self-care is about identifying, number one, what are your needs? What helps you show up as your best self? It doesn't have to come with these. It doesn't have to be about these expensive wellness apps. There are a lot of wellness apps out there for self-care. It don't have to be about that. It don't have to be about, going to Starbucks and getting a latte and sitting back, and enjoying life. It don't have to be about that. Self-care is free. And I say it's free because you can start embracing it today. As I mentioned, self-care is not a one-size-fits-all. And I say that because some of the things that you can start doing is think about the power of your breath, breathing, relaxation, okay, taking deep breaths. You don't have to pay for that. There is power in your breath. Think about when you've experienced painful situations. Taking a deep breath. There are things you can do for yourself. There are things you can do, such as even going for a walk. Okay, you may be saying, well, the area in which I live may not be safe to go for a walk. Okay, then guess what? You're home. Go for a walk. If you got stairs, go up and down those stairs. If you don't have stairs, walk around your house. Self-care, another form of it is, all right, think about what you need mentally and physically. So I know that the pandemic has really turned it upside down when it comes down to self-care due to COVID, because many people, didn't have access to all the resources that they needed. So self-care, there are a lot of different things you can do that are free. One of the things is I love music, Mia. So I love listening to smooth jazz music. Turn on the radio. Listen to some smooth jazz music. Start taking bubble baths. There's just so many different things you can do. If you have some essential oils, do that. If it comes down to your bathing, if you have some, let's say, magnesium or some lavender, start doing that. But it's not, I know and understand that many people, Mia, feel that it is a privilege, but I'm gonna give people some completely free and easy self-care ideas. Okay, number one, walk in nature. All right, I love nature. One thing I discovered, if I went to a forest preserve or wherever you choose to go to experience it, it shuts off the stress for you. Just experience the sights, the sounds, and the smells of being in fresh air. But if you're going to walk in nature, so much is happening in the world today. I highly recommend that you take someone with you that you can trust so that you will not be out there, on alone, because I want you to stay safe. Self-care can be something as simple as reading a book or a magazine. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. On my phone, I've signed up for subscriptions. That's a cost. So my point is, read a book or magazine. Maybe you have some books or magazines around your house. But if you don't, guess what you can do? You can sign up for a library card, go to a library, and check out some books. Or go to the library and sit down and read a magazine. They may not let you check out magazines. Books they will. But start reading those books and magazines. It feels good. Also, to meditate. Pray. Find your favorite scriptures. All right? If you can, sleep in on the weekend. The other thing that's funny to me, but I enjoy doing, is watching the clouds. So in my home office, sometimes I'll just look out my window and I'll just watch the clouds. Other thing, paint, draw. If you have some crayons at home or some pens or whatever you have, start using that to create your own art. You can even do yoga at home. I've already mentioned about, there's power in your breath, but I'm going to tell you something else that's really fun. You can start doing some dancing, maybe finding joy in singing. Look at the stars. Pray. I've done a lot of praying to God about things, and that for me was self-care because it guarded my mind. I used to always say, Lord, keep your hedge of protection surrounding me from danger seen and unseen. If you can, spend some quality time with some loved ones. Right now, I'm working on creating another vision board. You can do that with things you have around your home. If you got some paper, you can start writing things down and practicing that and making your own vision boards. You don't have to have poster board. If you want a poster board and you have extra money, and if you have $1.25, you can go to the dollar store and get a poster board, or just use some paper or whatever else that you have at home. Other things you can do. If you can, start a gratitude journal. You don't have to buy a journal. Get some piece of paper. Just guess what? Just start writing things down. Watch something funny on YouTube that's going to give you a smile. I have a Siberian Husky, so a lot of times I'm watching these Siberian Husky videos, and it relaxes me, and it makes me laugh. Okay, so those things that I name, even stretching, okay, get out in the garden, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset. Those things are not costing you any money. So in other words, it's nothing that you have to go out and buy. Sometimes when people think of self-care, they're focused on massages, they're focused on manicures, pedicures, and all that. Those things are great, but I need to save money. And so when I'm practicing self-care, I'm not focused on manicures, manis, and pedis. I'm not doing any of those things. I'm doing exactly what I'm sharing with you all today. I'm reading a book or magazine. I'm out there in nature. I'm meditating. I'm praying. I'm praying. I'm looking at the sunrise or the sunset. The weather is getting nice. Sometimes I'll go to the park and look at the different flowers to see, hey, what nature has unveiled. Those things don't cost me a dime. It is free.
Right. Right. I sort of feel like you should get paid for all those free ideas because they're truly priceless, Nisi. Thank you. And, to me, and we've talked about this before, this is exactly where my concept of the inner revolution begins, right? Because the everyday hustle, the grind, I've got to get myself through that. It's ultimately up to us as to what the quality of our thoughts and what's going on inside is going to be like. And we need not wait for the dismantling of the outside systems for that. We've got to work on rebuilding our own from the inside out. We know that this life is our own to live, and ultimately we get to choose what that looks like for us to a certain extent. It doesn't matter what others want or what they wish for us. The power remains in our own hands. But there's so much tragic beauty in the truth that none of us are alone in this. What we've experienced that has led us here differs, of course. There are certain aspects of another's existence that we'll never be able to completely comprehend or relate to, right? But in terms of being broken, of being tested, of being pushed to what feels like our absolute last breaking point, these are all things that we can begin to meet each other in the middle on. And thus we're presently, presented with the divine opportunity to carry one another through the darkness and back into the light. But, of course, wrapping it all back around, this first requires that we carry ourselves, because as we both know all too well, nobody can do that for us. So, Nisi, any final points to make or closing thoughts to leave our audience with?
I do want to add to that when it comes down to the self-care. One of the other things that I should have also mentioned is that I think that is a great form of self-care is also to remove yourself, take a social media break sometimes. Switch off your phone for a while, even if it's 24 hours. And I say that because when you look at social media, sometimes there's so much garbage out there, things that are depressing, that make you feel bad. Sometimes you just have to disassociate yourself from it and remove yourself from it. But again, start thinking about what you need. You know what you need. Think about what you need. Self-care, what Mia may need for her self-care may be different than what Nisi may need for mine. But we all have to start somewhere. And I think the biggest piece of that is don't make it complicated. Make it simple. Just make it simple and just get started. We got to get started somewhere.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Thank you, Nisi. And I just want to, once again, just as a whole, for this time together, it's been so profound. I wholeheartedly appreciate you and value you for being here and sharing such valuable wisdom. You are a gift to this world, and I am outrageously grateful to not only know you, but have the honor in calling you my friend.
And thank you, Mia. And for your audience, I do have a guide that I've put together on self-care. So if anyone is interested in it, reach out to Mia or you can contact me. My name is Nisi, and I can be reached at 224 area code 225-9478. If you would like a copy of it, feel free to contact me directly. I'll be happy to provide it to you. Feel free also to check out our website, www.fibromyalgia.patienteducation.info, or reach out to Mia and she can connect us. So, Mia, thank you for allowing me and sharing your space with me. I really appreciate it. And, I just love you, and I remember when we connected, we didn't even know each other, but at that training, I knew that you were someone that I wanted to know more about, because just our passion for making a difference in people's lives and advocacy, I think that's something that we just connected with instantly, that I still remember to this day, and I appreciate our friendship, our sisterhood.
Same. You know, we rise by lifting others, so I feel so privileged to be able to do that alongside you and walk alongside you in your journey. I will be hitting you up for a copy of that guide. So
I'll send it to you today.
Thank you so much, Nisi. I look forward to having you again soon.
Thank you. God bless.